Hi everyone, my name's Jen and I'll be guiding you through a quick yin yoga class specifically meant for runners. And so, um, just to explain in case you're not familiar with yin yoga is a slower practice than what most people would be accustomed to if they go to Ashtanga or Vinyasa or Power Flow. So we typically hold the poses for 1 minute, 2 minutes, sometimes even longer than that. And the idea about holding poses for longer means that your body is able to get deeper into the connective tissues. So in your faster paced classes, we tend to just stretch the muscles in certain poses. In yin, because of the longer hold, then we are able to go beyond the muscles and into the less pliable areas of the body, which are your connective tissues. These are your fascia, your tendons, your ligaments, your joints, etc. So we bring um, healthy range of motion back to the body by getting into these connective tissues. And this class is specifically meant for runners or anyone who does maybe cycling, could also benefit, triathletes. The poses we'll be doing will work on areas that specifically would tighten up. If you do running, cycling, etc. on a regular basis. So definitely a lot of poses working on the lower body, but we will also do a couple of poses that also work on the upper body because we do hold tension in these areas as well. And so for our longer holds, you might need the support of yoga blocks in certain asanas that we'll be doing. So if you have a block or two like this, please have it nearby so that it's easily accessible for you. If you don't have a prop, then you can improvise with something that you have at home. Maybe a thick book would do, if you have a thick Harry Potter book, or a thick encyclopedia, or Shantaram, that sort of thing, then you can use that instead. And we're going to start in a seated position. So you can do this seated pose if this feels comfortable for you. This is called Thunderbolt or Seiza, with the legs together and the hips sitting on the heels, hands on top of your thighs. Or you can come into any other seated pose that you like, maybe a cross-legged style, half lotus, full lotus. And if you feel like there's a lot of tension here in your hip flexors as you stay seated, you could opt to place a block or even just a towel, folded up blanket underneath the hips so that you're elevating the hips a little above the knees, and that will bring you a little bit more comfort and ease. Rest your hands onto your thighs or your knees and close your eyes. Relax the shoulders away from the ears. And feel the spine lengthen. Imagine that there's a string attached to your head. And then the other end is attached to the ceiling. So imagine you're like a marionette or a puppet. And then pull that string taut. So now you're lengthening the spine, the top of the head, reaching up to the sky. Keep the chin parallel to the floor. Feel the weight of your hands against the knees and feel the connection of your body against the ground, whether it's your hips, your shins, the tops of the feet, depending on how you're seated. And for the first few breaths here, as we stay seated, just breathe normally in and out through the nose. And as you do so, observe the breath. Noticing how shallow or how deep your breathing is. Noticing where you feel the breath in the body. Maybe you feel your belly expand and contract with each breath. Maybe you feel it in the chest. Maybe you feel the sides of the body expand and contract. And for the next few cycles of breath now, we're going to practice something called 3-part breath. So an easy way to think about this is that you're imagining that your torso is a gas tank, like in a car. And imagine that this gas tank is composed of 3 parts. The first part being your belly, so the lowest part of your torso. The second part being the chest, so midway up. And then the last part being the uppermost part of your torso, which is above the chest and below the neck. And as we inhale, we imagine first filling up the belly, and then the chest, and then the topmost part all the way up to the collarbone. And as you exhale, you're imagining that you're releasing everything inside that gas tank from top to bottom, emptying it out. So we're going to do that for a couple of breaths. To be more aware of your breathing, you can place one hand on your belly and the other hand on your chest. And so you can feel that slight movement, that slight lift up and down with every intake and outtake of breath. And so let's start. Synchronize the breath first by exhaling. And then inhale, filling up the belly. And then the chest. And all the way up to the collarbone. And as you exhale, release everything out, emptying everything until the bottom. Inhale, fill up the belly, up to the chest, and all the way up to the collarbone. And exhale, slowly with control, releasing the breath out, squeezing out all the air from the lungs until you're empty. Inhale, fill up the belly, and then the chest, and all the way up to the base of the neck. And exhale, slowly letting go of all that air inside you until you're empty all the way down to the bottom of the belly. 2 more rounds. Inhale, fill up the belly, fill up the chest, and fill it all the way up to the base of the neck. And exhale, releasing the air out. Inhale, filling up the belly, up to the chest, up to the base of the neck. And exhale, releasing the breath out in one long exhale. And release the hands back onto the knees. And you can keep your eyes closed if you'd like as we move into our practice, or if you prefer to keep the eyes open, go ahead and open the eyes. And if you have a prop underneath the hips, set the prop aside. and come into Thunderbolt or Seiza if you're not there yet. So legs together, sit the hips back towards the heels, hands onto your knees. And the first pose for today will be something called toe squat. So we're going to stretch the back side of your foot. And this is great to prevent plantar fasciitis. We're stretching the fascia along the sole of the foot. And so what you're going to do is lean forward and tuck the toes under and really get all the toes tucked in, including the pinky toe. So go ahead, reach back and use your hand if you need to. Now you can have a prop here in front of you just in case for support. And then slowly start to shift the weight back until you're seated with the shoulders stacked on top of the hips. And you can rest your hands onto your thighs. And we're going to stay here for about a minute and see if this is still okay for you. So it's okay to feel a slight discomfort but not sharp pain. So listen to the body. Anytime it gets to be uncomfortable for you, you can always shift the weight slightly forward so that you're releasing some of the weight from the feet. So you can rest your hands onto your block here. And then if you want to come back to it at a certain point while we're still in that 1 minute, then you can come back to it. So you can play around with it the whole time that we're here. Keep the breath nice and even. Still breathing comfortably through the nose, in and out. Maybe you're starting to feel some fire on the back of the foot, along the sole of the feet. Try to find softness, especially in the lower body. So if you feel that you're clenching anywhere, the glutes, the hips, the quads, see if you can release that tension, relax. And then slowly lift the hips off the heels. And then untuck the toes, come into your Thunderbolt. And just recover here for a bit. You can stay as is in Thunderbolt, or if you'd like to add a little more intensity to that stretch now, on the front of the feet, we're going to walk the hands back and then lift the knees up an inch or so. And you're going to feel that stretch along the front of the foot intensify a little more. You can add a bit of support here by placing your props underneath the knees so that you don't use a lot of muscular effort to keep the knees lifted. But again, if this is too intense for you, then you can always just come into Seiza and you're also getting that stretch on the front of the feet. And this is nice because our feet generally tend to be in a more dorsiflex position. And so this is a great way to counter that, at least for a minute of your life every day or once a week. So find your option. And again, you can always play around with it, lowering and lifting the knees up as needed. And slowly shift back into center, coming back into Thunderbolt if you had the knees lifted. Take a breath here. And then place the hands onto the mat. Coming into a tabletop position, hands under the shoulders, hips on top of the knees. And you can tap the feet out a bit here. Doing this a couple of times, bringing some blood back onto the feet, onto the toes. All right. Now from here, come back to your tabletop, find stillness. And we're going to step the right foot forward between the hands and tuck the left toes under. Walk the left knee towards the back until you start to feel a stretch here along the left hip flexor. Taking maybe 2 or 3 breaths here just to get your body adjusted. Feeling the hips sinking down towards the ground. And make sure that you're keeping the spine long and reaching the chest forward. So you're not rounding the spine, you're not looking back towards your left knee, but rather your gaze is forward towards the front of your mat. And your chest is reaching forward. And you can stay here in low dragon, or you can opt to come up into flying dragon if you like. If you're coming up, you can use blocks under the hands for support. Keep the tailbone lengthening down, shoulders away from the ears. Keep lifting the chest. Or if you want to release the hands off the mat or off the blocks entirely, arms by the sides. Or if you want to release the intensity a little, but still keeping the hands off the ground, you can place a block under the right hip, and that provides a little more support. So lots of different options here for your dragon. Go ahead and find what feels best for you. And focus on that stress that you're feeling here along the left hip flexor, maybe also in the quads. Taking a couple more breaths here. And releasing the block from under the hip if you have one. Setting the blocks aside. Hands back under the shoulders on the ground. And slowly step the right foot back, coming back into a tabletop. And you can come into a quick child's pose here just as a reset. So setting the hips back to the heels. Hands stretching forward, forehead to the ground. Or maybe even on a block if you can't reach the ground with the forehead. Notice how the left side feels and how does it compare versus the right side that we haven't worked on yet. And then slowly lift back up, coming into your tabletop position one more time. Transitioning to the opposite side, stepping the left foot forward between the hands. Tuck the right toes under and slide the right knee back. Feel that stretch across the right hip flexor now. And once again, option 1 is to stay low in your dragon, hands to the ground. Option 2 is to start to come up, maybe using blocks under the hands for support. Still feeling the hips sinking down towards the ground, feeling the stretch across the right hip flexor here. And last option, to fly your dragon completely, hands off your blocks or off the ground. But if this is too intense for you, but you don't want to come down again, you can support your left hip with a prop. Keep the tailbone lengthening down towards the ground, so you're slightly tucking in the pelvis. Keep lifting the chest, keep the spine long, shoulders away from the ears. Just a couple more breaths in your dragon. Taking one more cycle of breath. and releasing the props, setting them aside. Hands back to the ground, and step the left knee back, coming back to your tabletop. And then coming into your child's pose again, sit the hips back to the heels, forehead towards the mat or onto your block. Taking a couple of breaths here to reset and to recover. So notice again this time, how does that left side feel? How does the right side feel in comparison? Now that we've worked on both sides, does it feel a little more even? And slowly lift the head and walk the hands back, setting any props aside. Now shift your weight to one side so that you can extend the legs forward. And no need to engage the legs. No need to flex the feet. So just let the lower body relax completely. The feet can be hip width distance apart here. And you can have your props handy just in case you'll need it. Coming into caterpillar. So we're going to come into a nice gentle forward fold. And we're going to be stretching the entire back line of the body here. All the way. From the heels all the way up towards the back of the head. So, hands on the ground, framing your bottom part of your bottom body. Or your lower body rather. Walk the hands forward. And start to feel a slight rounding in the spine here. Chin coming closer to the chest. So you can let the neck relax and let the head hang heavy. Or if it feels better for you to support the head, you can make a tower of blocks here. As many blocks as you need. Until you can find that correct height that allows you to rest your forehead onto your props. Once again, letting go of all muscular effort. If you feel any tension, any muscular engagement in the body, see if you can release. The tendency here is sometimes to squeeze the glutes or contract the quad muscles. Soften and release. The more that we relax, the more that we find softness and use the breath, the better that we get into our connective tissues here. Maybe even flipping the palms to face up so that you're also releasing some tension on your wrists. Find surrender. Taking 2 more breaths. And slowly lift the head up. Come back to seated, set the props aside. And we're going to come into half saddle. So I'm going to shift over to show you